In 2011, one of the richest countries on earth ran out of butter. Not sugar, not oil, not medicine, butter. In Norway, the shelves went bare almost overnight. A rainy summer had hurt the cows, and a popular new diet had sent demand soaring. Within weeks, people couldn't find a single block of butter before the biggest baking season of the year. Then it became almost unbelievable. Prices climbed to 20 or 30 times normal. Some packs sold online for around $75, and people started smuggling butter across the border. Police stopped cars packed with illegal butter. Grown adults arrested for butter. It sounds ridiculous. It wasn't. And that's what should make you curious. Because the strange power butter holds over us did not begin in Norway. It began thousands of years before supermarkets, before factories, before anyone knew what a calorie was. People once paid their taxes with butter. They buried it underground and guarded it like treasure. In cold mountain temples, they burned it as a prayer. In one French city, it helped build a cathedral. It even became part of a conflict that helped split a church in two. So this is not really a story about food. It is a story about survival, about winters that killed, about where humans were even able to live, about money, faith, power, and light, all hidden inside the soft yellow block sitting in your refrigerator right now. Quick question before we go any further. Is there butter in your fridge right now? Just yes or no in the comments. I want to see how many of us are holding a piece of this story without even knowing it, because you are. And once you discover what is really hiding inside that ordinary block, you will never look at butter the same way again. So let's go back. Back before supermarkets. Back before farms. Back to a world with one enormous problem. A world before butter. Chapter 1. The world before butter. Picture a family long ago. They have animals. Goats, maybe. Sheep. A few cattle. And every morning, those animals give them something wonderful. Milk. Milk is a gift. Warm. Full of energy. A child can drink it and grow strong. But milk has a cruel secret. It does not last. Leave it out for a day, and it turns. Leave it two, and it can make you sick. No refrigerators. No ice in a warm month. Nothing to stop it. So every drop is a race against time. Drink it now, or lose it. For most of human history, this was the trap. Animals gave the most milk in spring and summer, when the grass was green. But food was needed most in winter, when nothing grew. Winter back then meant something we can barely imagine. The fields go brown, and the last of the harvest is already eaten. The animals give little milk, or none. Snow covers the ground. The cold does not care how hungry you are. In warm places, people could grow food for much of the year. But in the cold north, in the mountains, in the far places where winter ruled for months, families faced a terrible math problem. They needed calories that could last. Not food for today, food for the frozen months ahead. Meat could be dried or salted, grain could be stored, but milk, that daily flood of rich energy, seemed impossible to save. Every summer, animals gave more than a family could drink. And every summer, most of it was simply lost, poured out, wasted, gone. It must have felt like watching money spill through your fingers. Somewhere, somehow, people needed a better way. A way to catch all that summer energy and carry it into winter. Humanity needed to solve one quiet, deadly problem. How do you save milk before it spoils? The answer, when it finally came, did not come from a genius. It did not come from a king. It came from an accident. Chapter 2. The accident that changed everything. Here is the story people have told for a very long time. A nomad is on a journey, moving with their animals, always walking to new grass, new water, new land. Before setting out, they pour fresh milk into a bag made from animal skin, a pouch of sheepskin sewn tight. They tie it to the back of a pack animal and start walking. The road is rough, the animal sways. The bag bounces and shakes for hours. Bump, sway, hour after hour. Now picture the end of that day. The traveler is hot, dusty, worn down to the bone. Their throat is dry and cracked. All day, one thought has kept them going. The cool, sweet milk waiting in that bag. A simple drink. A little relief. That is all they want. They reach for the pouch. They loosen the tie. They tip it to their lips. And nothing pours out. No cool liquid. No drink. Instead, something slides against the opening. Something thick. Something solid. They stop. They open the bag wider and look inside. The milk they packed this morning is gone. In its place sits a strange pale lump, soft and heavy, floating in a thin, cloudy liquid. For a moment, there is only confusion, maybe even anger. The milk is ruined. A whole day's drink, spoiled by the road. They dip a finger in. They taste it. And everything changes. It is not spoiled. It is rich, creamy, full of fat and flavor, like the best part of the milk gathered into one place. The endless shaking has done something no one planned. It has churned the milk. It has knocked the fat together into a soft, golden solid. That was the moment. One tired traveler, one ruined drink, and a flash of understanding that would ripple across thousands of years. The ruined milk was not ruined at all. It was a miracle. That clump was butter. Nobody planned it. The motion of the road did the work. The milk churned itself. Now, is this exact story true? We cannot know. It is a legend passed down for centuries. But the science behind it is completely real. Shake cream long enough, and the fat really does clump into butter. Any of us could do it in a jar today. And we do have hard evidence that butter is astonishingly old. Scientists have found traces of milk fats on broken pottery in what is now Turkey, from around 8,000 years ago, older than the pyramids, older than writing itself. Later, in ancient Mesopotamia, people carved pictures into stone, showing dairy being made. One surprise hides in those early days. The first butter probably did not come from cows at all. Early herders kept goats, sheep, and even yaks. Their milk came first. Cows came later. So a traveler with a bag of milk had, by pure luck, stumbled onto one of the most useful discoveries in human history. Because butter was not just a happy snack. Butter solved the winter problem. Compare what it could do with what milk could not. Milk spoils in a day. Butter lasts for weeks. Milk is heavy and sloshes. Butter is solid. You can carry it, pack it, hide it, and trade it. And it is almost pure fat, a small block holding a huge amount of energy, the fuel a body needs to stay warm. In one accidental churn, milk had been transformed. Its energy was now locked into a form that could travel and wait. Sometimes, civilization is not built by great inventions. Sometimes, it is built by accidents. And this accident was about to change where humans could live. Chapter 3. The Fat That Fed Civilization. Forget kings for a moment. Forget emperors and armies and famous names. This part of the story belongs to ordinary people. The farmer with a few animals. The mother feeding hungry children. The traveler crossing cold land with a pack on their back. Butter mattered to them for 3 plain reasons. It stored energy. All that rich milk from the good months could now be saved for hard times. Nothing had to be wasted. It survived. Kept cool, it lasted far longer than fresh milk. A family could make it when milk was plentiful and eat it when the animals gave nothing. And it made poor food rich. This one is easy to miss, but it may be the biggest of all. In hard times, people ate thin, dull food. Plain porridge, coarse bread, boiled grain. Now add a spoon of butter. Suddenly that plain porridge holds real energy. That dry bread becomes food a working body can live on. For a child in a cold country, that spoon of fat could be the difference between growing up strong and growing up weak. But here is the bigger idea. The one that makes butter far more than a snack. Butter changed where humans could live. Think about it. If your only food is crops, you can only live where crops grow. That rules out huge parts of the world. Cold lands, high mountains, dry grasslands. But animals can live in those hard places. Sheep and goats climb rocky hills. Cattle and yaks graze wide, cold grasslands where wheat would never survive. And if you have animals, you have milk. And if you can turn milk into butter, you can store their energy for months. That changes everything. Butter, and foods like it, let people settle land that should have been too harsh to live on. Cold mountain valleys, windy coasts, open grasslands. Whole ways of life grew up around herding animals and preserving their fat. Preserved fat stretched the human map. It pushed the edges of where families could survive. And we can see the people who did the work. In Ireland and Scotland, girls and young women often spent whole summers up in the hills with the family's cattle. Away from home, in simple huts, they milked and churned day after day, then carried the butter back down before winter. It was hard, lonely, skilled work, and it kept whole communities alive. Here is a truth that hides behind all of history. Great cities and great empires all need one thing first: calories. Nobody builds a monument on an empty stomach. Before you raise a temple, you have to feed the people who raise it. Civilizations are built by calories long before they are built by stone. And in the cold corners of the world, butter was one of the quiet engines that kept those calories flowing. But talk is easy. To really understand what butter meant, we need to watch it work. We need to watch a winter. Chapter 4. The winter test snow. It falls for days. It covers the fields, the roads, the roofs. The world goes white and silent and very, very cold. Inside a small home, a family waits. The grain they stored is almost gone. The last of it rattles at the bottom of the sack. The animals are thin. Outside, there is nothing to gather, nothing easy to hunt, nothing green for miles. This is the moment that decided who lived and who did not. Not battles, not kings, winter. Every year it came, and every year it asked the same question. Did you prepare? Months earlier, when the sun was warm and the animals gave milk freely, this family made a choice. Instead of drinking every drop, they churned. Day after day, they turned extra milk into butter and packed it away. Back then, it felt like a chore, like giving up a treat for later. But they did it anyway. And now, in the deep of winter, that choice keeps them alive. A little butter each day, melted into thin porridge, spread on the last of the bread. It is not a feast, but it is warmth. It is the fuel that carries them, one cold day at a time, towards spring. The family down the road made a different choice. Back in the warm months, they drank their milk fresh, all of it. Every sweet, easy cupful. Why churn for hours? Why save for a winter that felt so far away? So they enjoyed the summer, and they saved nothing. Now walk from the first home to the second. In the first, there is a little warmth, a little butter, thin meals, but meals. Children with enough strength to sit up, to talk, to hope for spring. In the second, the shelves are bare. By February, the difference is written on their faces. The food is gone. The animals give nothing. There is no fat left to stir into the pot, no energy to hold back the cold. Hunger settles in and does not leave. It makes people quiet. It makes them tired in a way sleep cannot fix. A body with no fuel begins to burn itself, growing thinner, weaker, slower, colder. Winter does not shout. It waits. And for a family with empty shelves, it simply waits them out. This is what butter really stood against. That little block was the thin line between the first home and the second. Between a family that greets the spring and a family that does not. Butter was not a grocery item. It was a shield held up against death. And it was more than one family. Butter let whole peoples hold on to brutal places, places most crops would flee from. Because they could store fat, they could stay. Once people learned they could beat winter with a block of fat, something new began to grow. Because if butter could save a life, butter could also be worth something. And anything worth something soon becomes worth trading. Chapter 5. From Survival to Wealth. A food that lasts. A food that travels. A food everyone needs. Do you know what that becomes? Money. Not coins, not paper, but value you can hold in your hands. And in many places, butter became exactly that. Now for one of the strangest facts in this whole story. In parts of the Old North, people paid their taxes in butter. not in silver, in butter. In Norway and the islands around it, families owed a share of what they made to their lords and their church, and one way they paid was with dairy fat. On the Orkney Islands near Scotland, there was even a special butter tax, tied to how much land you held. Farmers made butter not just to feed themselves, but to hand over as payment. That tells you something remarkable. Butter was so trusted, so steady, that it worked almost like cash. A block of it had a known worth. You could settle a debt with it, and where there is value, there is trade. Butter began to travel far beyond the farm that made it, into markets, across regions. Whole areas became famous for their dairy, the way some places today are famous for their wine, and people found clever ways to protect their treasure. Butter was wealth, and wealth attracts thieves. So in Ireland and Scotland, people did something that still amazes scientists today. They buried their butter. Deep in the cold, wet peat bogs, they hid barrels and bags of it underground. The bog was the perfect hiding place, cool, low in oxygen, and slightly acidic, which made it work almost like a natural refrigerator. Buried there, butter could last a very long time, safe from raiders, safe from spoiling. Hidden like buried gold. Then, sometimes, it was forgotten. Which is why, even now, people digging in those bogs still find it. Bog butter, it is called. Hundreds of these buried lumps have been discovered, most of them in Ireland and Scotland. Some are small, some weigh as much as a large dog. And the practice went on for a mind-bending stretch of time, around 3,500 years. One find says it all. A man cutting turf in an Irish bog once struck a huge pale lump. It came out heavy and cold and waxy, weighing about as much as a small child. Experts believed it was roughly 2,000 years old. 2,000 years. Buried, forgotten, and still holding its shape when it came back into the light. Butter hidden away before the fall of Rome. Older than most castles. Older than most of recorded history. It is proof, right there in your hands, of just how precious this simple fat once was. But butter was about to become something even bigger than money. It was about to collide with religion, and that collision would help build cathedrals and help crack a church in two. Chapter 6. The butter that built cathedrals. Let's start somewhere calm. A kitchen. By now, butter was everywhere in daily life. It made bread worth eating. It made porridge rich. In the cool countries of the north, butter was simply part of being alive. We like to think history is made by kings and battles and famous names, but history is also made by breakfast, and it turns out those quiet breakfasts could shake the world. It happened like this. In the Christian Europe of the Middle Ages, there were long holy stretches when rich foods were forbidden. The biggest was Lent, the weeks before Easter, when people were not supposed to eat meat, eggs, or dairy. That included butter, and this was not a day or two. Add up all the fasting days in the medieval year, and by some counts people were expected to give up butter and other rich foods for more than 100 days a year. Now remember our map. Down in the warm south, this was no great hardship. They had olive oil, rivers of it. When butter was banned, they simply cooked with oil. But in the cold north, in Germany, England, and Scandinavia, olive trees would not grow. Butter was not a luxury there. It was the main fat they had. Telling northern families to give up butter for 100 days was like telling them to give up cooking. So people did what people do. They found a loophole. You could pay the church for special permission to keep eating butter during the fasting season. Give a donation, and you were allowed your daily fat. And people, especially wealthy ones, happily paid. And this is where it becomes unforgettable. In the French city of Rouen, in a region famous for its butter, this became a fundraising machine. A powerful churchman named Cardinal Georges d'Amboise got permission from the Pope to sell these butter dispensations. Wealthy citizens paid up, and that butter money was poured into building a magnificent new tower on the city's great cathedral. The people of Rouen even gave it a nickname that stuck for centuries. They called it the Butter Tower. Sit with that for a second. A soaring stone tower, covered in carvings, reaching toward heaven, paid for by people who simply could not give up their butter. It still stands today. And Rouen was not the only one. Another French city, Bourges, has a butter tower of its own. But the story does not end with pretty towers, because these food rules, and the fees to escape them, made people angry. To many, it felt unfair. Why should the rich buy their way out of a holy rule while the poor went without? Why should the church grow wealthy off people's dinners? This anger over food became one of many sparks in a much larger fire. In time, that fire grew into the Protestant Reformation, the Great Split that broke Western Christianity into pieces and changed European history forever. Now, to be fair, butter did not cause the Reformation by itself. Huge forces were at work, about power, money, and belief, but the fight over food rules was part of the tinder. We think of a block of butter as small, harmless, boring, but butter helped build cathedrals, and it helped feed a rebellion that changed the world. History really is made by breakfast. And believe it or not, butter was about to do something even stranger than build a tower. It was about to become light. Chapter 7. When butter became light. Here is where we throw out the idea that butter is only food. Because in some parts of the world, people did not just eat butter, they burned it. Travel high into the Himalayan mountains, into the cold, thin air of the Tibetan plateau. Here, for well over 1,000 years, butter has done something that has nothing to do with dinner. Walk into an old mountain monastery. It is dim and cold outside, but inside, the halls glow with a soft, warm, golden light. That light is butter. In these Buddhist temples, people fill small lamps with yak butter, add a wick, and light them. Not one or two, sometimes thousands, row upon row, flickering in the shadows. Some have been kept burning, day and night, for centuries. The butter here is not a meal, it is a prayer. Each little flame stands for wisdom pushing back the darkness. Lighting a butter lamp is a holy act, done for the sick, for the dead, for peace. Families of herders would carry their precious yak butter down the mountains and give it to the monasteries, just to keep those lamps alight. And it goes further still. In these same places, artists learned to sculpt butter, shaping it by hand into flowers, animals, and holy scenes. Works of art made entirely of fat. Some were treasured like the finest paintings. Let that sink in. The same substance a poor family melted into porridge to survive a winter was, somewhere else, being shaped into sacred art and burned as light in a temple. Butter was not one thing. It was many. It had been food, and money, and taxes. Now here it was as fire, and faith, and beauty. And it had always been more than a spread. Long ago, the ancient Greeks and Romans mostly did not eat butter at all. To them it was strange, something to rub on skin and sore bodies as medicine, not food. Another quiet split in the human map. Butter as food in the cool north. Butter as ointment in the warm south. One golden substance. So many lives. For most of these thousands of years, though, one thing about butter had barely changed. It was still made slowly, by hand, by aching arms. That was about to end, because the machines were coming. Chapter 8. The Science of Butter. For thousands of years, butter making barely changed. You gathered the cream. You churned it, by shaking, rocking, or plunging, until your arms burned. It was slow, and you could only make a little at a time. Then the world entered a new age, the age of machines. In the 1800s, everything sped up, and clever inventors turned their eyes toward that humble block of fat. One big breakthrough came from a Swedish engineer named Carl Gustaf de Laval. He built a spinning machine called a cream separator. Before it, you had to wait hours for cream to rise to the top of the milk on its own. His machine spun the milk so fast, the cream pulled away almost instantly. Churns became machines too. Butter could now be made faster than ever, and in far larger amounts. Two more discoveries changed it forever. The first was refrigeration, cold storage, and later the home fridge, meant butter could be kept fresh far longer, and shipped across whole countries. The old winter problem, the one that started this entire story, was finally being tamed by technology. The second was pasteurization, gently heating milk to kill harmful germs, which made dairy safer and longer lasting. Then came a rival, a challenger to butter's throne. The French ruler Napoleon III offered a prize. He wanted a cheap fat to feed his armies and the poor, something like butter but far less costly. A French chemist named Hippolyte Maige-Mouriès took up the challenge and created a pale, waxy substitute. The world would come to know it as margarine. And the butter makers were furious. What followed were the butter wars. Dairy farmers fought margarine with everything they had. Some places taxed it heavily, or restricted it, or even, at times, forced it to be sold in odd colors so no one would mistake it for the real thing. People fought, for decades, over fat. That is how much butter mattered. But science did not only make butter and copy it. Soon, it began to suspect it. For most of history, the story of butter was simple. It was a hero, energy, strength, the food that carried people through winter. Nobody questioned the hero. Then came the twist. In the middle of the 20th century, doctors went hunting for the cause of heart disease, which was striking down more and more people, and their suspicion landed on fat, the rich, saturated fat found in foods like butter. The theory spread fast. The old hero had a new role. Suddenly, butter was the villain. Health guidelines told people to put the butter down. For decades, that was the official story. Butter sat under a cloud, blamed for clogged arteries and failing hearts. But a good mystery never stays that simple. Over the last couple of decades, scientists reopened the case. They looked again at the old evidence, and much of it did not hold up the way people had assumed. Some large reviews found the link between saturated fat and heart disease was weaker and blurrier than everyone had believed. The villain, it seemed, had been partly framed, and yet the case is not closed. Other recent studies still warn that a diet drowning in saturated fat can push bad cholesterol up. The arrows point in different directions at once. So what is the real answer? The honest truth is that the detectives are still arguing. The picture is genuinely mixed. Some evidence says one thing, some says another, and the experts have not settled it. What most of them agree on is something your grandparents could have told you for free: balance. Butter is not poison, and it is not magic. It is a rich, energy-packed food, best enjoyed with a little sense, not eaten by the bucket and not feared like a monster. There is a quiet lesson in it. For a long time, people were absolutely certain about fat. Then the science turned, and turned again. The hero became a villain, and the villain turned out to be complicated. Just like the best mysteries. The same butter that once saved families from winter is now studied in labs and printed on nutrition labels. The block of fat had come a very long way, and it is still causing trouble today. Chapter 9. The modern block of butter. Walk into a supermarket right now. There it is, a whole shelf of it. Cheap, common, easy to grab without a second thought. It is easy to forget that this ordinary shelf is the end of a story thousands of years long. Today, butter is made all over the world, in amounts the old churners could never have dreamed of. And the biggest butter-making country might surprise you. It is not in cold Europe, it is India. India produces more butter than anywhere else on earth, millions of tons every year. A lot of it is made into ghee, a clarified butter simmered until it is pure golden fat. Ghee keeps well even in a hot climate, which is exactly why it became so important there. The old problem, making fat last, solved in a warm land in its own clever way. The European Union is another giant producer, and countries like the United States and New Zealand make huge amounts too. And butter has grown fancy. Once it was survival food. Now you can buy cultured butter, gently soured for a richer, tangier taste, and artisan butter, churned slowly and salted by hand and sold as a little luxury. Survival food, gone gourmet. But if you think butter has lost its power to cause a stir, let me tell you what happened in Norway. One of the richest countries on earth ran out of butter. Then people started smuggling it. It sounds like a joke. It was not. The year was 2011. A rainy summer had hurt the cows. At the same time, a popular new diet had people wanting more butter than ever. Demand shot up, supply fell, and the shelves went bare. Then the panic began. Right before the big holiday baking season, Norwegians could not find butter anywhere. Prices climbed to 20 or 30 times normal. Online, single packs were being sold for the price of a fancy dinner. One report put a packet as high as around $75. And then came the smugglers. People started sneaking butter across the border to sell for a profit. Some were caught by police, their cars stuffed with hundreds of pounds of illegal butter. A modern, wealthy nation in a full-blown butter crisis, with butter smugglers arrested at the border. Thousands of years after that first accidental churn, people were still panicking over butter, still paying wild prices for it, still willing to break the law to get it. The story never actually ended. It just moved into your kitchen, the knife you use to spread it, the warm toast at breakfast, the pan you drop it into for eggs, the cakes it makes soft and rich, the small, ordinary ritual of butter meeting warm bread. Conclusion. So let's go back to where we started. An ordinary refrigerator, a normal morning. Someone reaches in and pulls out a block of butter. They cut off a soft piece and spread it across a slice of warm bread. Then they take a bite and think nothing of it. It is just breakfast, just butter, just an everyday thing. But now you know what is really hiding inside that little block. Ancient herders on long, dusty journeys. A bag of milk shaking on the back of a pack animal, until, by pure accident, something golden appeared. Long winters, and the families who survived them because months earlier they thought ahead and saved. Whole peoples who lived in cold mountains and windy coasts because they could store the energy of milk as fat. Girls churning in summer huts high in the hills. Cold bogs holding treasure older than Rome. Farmers paying their taxes in butter. Cathedrals raised with butter money. A church cracking apart, partly over food. And thousands of little flames glowing in mountain temples, burning butter as a prayer. All of it folded quietly into a food you keep next to the milk and eggs. That small block of butter helped feed civilization long before anyone understood nutrition, or wrote a single word about health, or knew what a calorie was. So the next time you spread a little butter on warm bread, stop, just for a second, feel the weight of it, that soft, plain, ordinary thing. It outlived empires. It crossed frozen mountains. It saved children from the dark of winter. It built towers. It lit temples. It shaped where we could live. All of that, hidden in your hand. You are not making breakfast. You are holding survival itself. 10,000 years of it. Look down. That is not butter. That is how we made it here.